Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. It's great to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, Matt Gaetz is officially out as the nominee for Attorney General. Florida AG Pam Bondi is in. President Trump making the announcement on Truth Social last night. A lot of interesting things going on, but with Gaetz out, it seems the Marxist Dems are going to have a new person to go after, and it'll probably be Pete Hegseth, the man tapped to run the Pentagon. Folks, on today's show, I want to do a deep dive and a breakdown of what went on in the 2024 election. As for the polls, who was right, who was wrong, why were they wrong, what was the agenda they had that they set out on, and why would they ruin their reputations, the little bit that they had left. Our guest today is Mark Mitchell. He's the leading pollster for Rasmussen, a great friend of the show, a terrific pollster, and one of the few to get it right, and he was right all along. Mark Mitchell, it's great to have you back here on the Great America Show. It's been about 2 weeks since you've been on the show. Election Day was the last time you were here. You were gracious enough to join our 2 a.m. live stream where we had some fun going over some of these numbers and watching these Marxist leftists melt down. So I asked you to come on today because I wanted to do a, quote, victory lap before I head out on vacation over to Asia. Because you were right, Mark. You were right about everything. You were honest about everything. I spoke to you first, I think, around the time of August, and you told me from the time of August where your polling was at, and that you were even erring on the side of caution, where you were underpolling Trumpers a little bit, just because you knew that there was some sort of baked-in margin of error that you didn't want to be wrong on. Turned out you were right about absolutely everything, and I give you credit on social media. I give you credit on every single show I do where I talk about polling because, like I said, you were right about everything. So now let's have some fun. Who were the biggest idiots? Who were the biggest losers of this election, aside from almost like 99% of pollsters?
Yeah, basically, it turns out if you're a pollster and you're owned by a major media company, you just absolutely are horrible at your jobs. 4 to 6 points in the wrong direction. And there were some people that had some good polls. But the thing is that if you go to Real Clear Politics and filter for these people, what you're going to see is there's people like us that put out, actually, there really aren't any people like us, but we put out a freaking ton of polls. We put out more polls than anybody else but Morning Consult. On a national level, we put out almost more than anybody else on a state level, too. And every single state that we put out showed Donald Trump winning the Electoral College map. Every single national poll we put out had basically, on average, Trump winning by 2 points. Then you got Morning Consult, who had Trump winning once, and then they had 15 polls with Harris plus 4, 5, 6. And then the other thing you'll see is like, oh, okay, that's great, Wall Street Journal. You did 3 polls. One of them had Harris plus 1. Another one had Trump plus 3. It's like, okay, whatever. Lucky call, right? Like, good job.
Yeah.
But what we were doing is fighting an info war because there was just so much lying going on. And we were basically alone on that. So, again, there are other pollsters, I think, that did a good job. Rich Paris put out some really accurate numbers. I think Trafalgar had somewhat good time, too. I don't think they polled any national races, but I think their states were okay, although I think we kind of beat them. And everybody else just, Marist, yikes, Reuters Ipsos, absolutely horrible. They had Harris plus 6 at one point.
Yeah.
And I will say that one of the things you may hear is the polling is more accurate this time. It is true, but that's because I think we totally shamed everybody into trying to save their credibility at the last minute. And all of the polls moved back right because everybody realized deep down inside, and they wouldn't say it in the news, deep down inside that Trump was going to win.
You know, it's funny. You mentioned Trafalgar. Right before the election when we spoke, I told you Robert is a good friend of mine. I've known him for some years from the polling and stuff and bringing him on the show. And I went through state by state with Robert before the election. And I said, Robert, I want to go through these states. I told him, I was like, I don't trust Nevada. He goes, it's funny you say that because Nevada's my kryptonite. So I go to look at Robert's polling in Nevada. He goes, I don't think I've ever got Nevada right. So I go to look at Robert's polling on election night, and he had Donald Trump losing Nevada by 0.2.
Yeah.
So I think we had you on the show at the time, and I go, Mark, I hope he's right. And you said Michigan was, I believe, was your kryptonite, and you had missed Michigan by a little bit as well, right?
Yeah, I had Harris plus 0.8 or something like that on average. I think our final poll might have been Harris plus 1 there. And, it was within the margin of error, but that's like when you have toss-up races like that, you basically flip a coin.
Right.
And I said to everybody, I thought my state polling was a little too left.
Yes.
It turns out if you average up all of the errors, it was 0.7 points to left. And actually my final calls were, I think it was only 0.5 or 0.6%. So essentially, there was no bias whatsoever, which is pretty crazy because as the industry refers to us as a right-leaning pollster, we actually lean left. They're just saying, well, you lean more right than all of the liars, and it's like guilty as charged. Right. And there was we did have polling error. Like we had Arizona going Trump +2, and it was an absolute Trump blowout. We overstated Georgia. The average of our Georgia polling was 4.5, and so we missed the high side there. It's polls. There's only so much you can do. I would love to have more budget to poll more, and then the error would have been less, but zero bias.
Yeah, and that's the problem. There was a poll I was reading this week. I want to pull it up here. Voters split over whether the media's coverage of the election was fair. I don't understand why you'd even have to poll something like that, Mark. There's no doubt you go out and you see some of these people and they're polling. And I won't mention any pollster's name, but a few weeks ago, I sent you an article about a TV show that was hailing one polling organization for getting it all right. And it turned out their polling was all done after the fact of many people already voting. But as you pointed out, Rasmussen was polling for the last, since Trump got into the race. So you had some up polls, you had some down polls, but you guys had a pretty significant trend of how the race progressed, and then a very significant trend on how it finished.
Yeah, 100%. And, I'll address them. Listen, the real takeaway is that independent polling is the only place you're going to get accurate polling.
Right.
And people have to understand first off, when people throw around most accurate pollster, we're kind of humble. I didn't put a lot of stuff out there about our accuracy. I'll just wait and see what Real Clear Politics says or the American First Policy Institute or whatever. I'm not going to break my arm patting myself on the back. But our business model is that we do public opinion work. We have news articles about what people in America think. We're polling right now. There are other people who are independent who kind of swoop in, do a couple polls the last week right before the election, and then disappear again for 3 years. And to me, again, I think they are picking their own measuring stick, and usually it's their absolute final call. But in that one particular case, 66% of their state polling was done after our final call, and the yardstick they're measuring themselves against was November 4th, after 60% of the country already voted. Their very first state poll set was 8 weeks after the switcheroo. You know what I mean? It's that's great, but your numbers were just not relevant to anybody. The betting market called the election on October 5th or 6th. It's that, again, great, you're accurate. But where were you? Where were you, bro?
Yeah. You say most accurate pollster, and it's kind of funny. I live in New York, Mark. And you go to every pizzeria in New York City, it says voted best pizza in New York City.
Yeah.
It's you can go to the dollar slice joint on the street corner where the thing is not even edible for rats, and it says #1 pizza in New York. It's just a total
raise, right? It's always a raise. Yeah.
Exactly. But with this, Mark, you have a track record. You have a business to uphold. You have a business that you have to sell your polling. You have to make money somehow, right? There is a way for us to tell how accurate the polling is, and there is a way for us to tell who's right and who's wrong. Nate Silver, he's been a thorn in everybody's side for the last 9 years. The guy's got Trump derangement syndrome. This time he came around a little bit more, but it wasn't by his own choice. I think it was more he figured where he has to be in order to not piss off as many people as he's done in the past. He's got a new piece out, Mark, in the New York Times, and the title is "Polling is Not the Problem." And he starts out by saying the polls just can't win the court of public opinion, the very thing they're designed to study. Meanwhile, this guy, Mark, has been wrong about everything. Wasn't Nate Silver at 538 when he was there? Didn't he remove you guys from their polling?
So, Nate, this guy's just, I think at this point he's entered clown territory, and people can go to our Twitter feed. I have it pinned right now. We made a response to his piece, but just to rewind a little bit, we were a real thorn in the side of the industry ourselves because nobody could affect our numbers. And one of the things that people did when election eve traffic became a really big thing is that they invested in 538 because they wanted to information gatekeep. And I'm pretty sure that they basically just created him because my understanding is when he was initially accurate, I think this has been revealed in court proceedings, that he just was receiving numbers leaked from within the Obama administration, the Obama campaign. So there is that, but it's like, okay, he ran 538. I don't think they have a massive track record of being accurate. They fired him a year ago, and they replaced him with a real scumbag, to be honest with you. And this guy,
worse than him?
What's that?
Worse than Nate?
Oh, yeah. Well, here's the thing: is Nate's not ideological. I think he just has a hard time being objective about reality. The same kind of thing. Well, I like Alan Lichtman probably is ideological, but it's like you're never. I don't think you're ever going to be able to trust that guy's takes, because I think there's just so much mental gymnastics going on. But yeah, so 538, they threw us out. Nate created his own thing. Turns out 538 and Nate both did the exact same thing this cycle, which is show Harris up some, then show Trump up some, then show Harris up some, and then literally end the race with, well, it's 50-50. We ran 80,000 Monte Carlo simulations, and Harris is favored to win in 0.013% more of them. And we don't know, oh, by the way, here's our electoral college map, and it shows Harris winning, but don't believe that. You know what I mean? It was like a punt, right? And so I kind of think that all Nate does, I almost think that he created the graft of his statistical model output before the election started, just to
absolutely
subscriptions. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And Nate's the ultimate ass kisser, Mark. I mean, I'm not kissing your ass by telling you this, but I think you're pretty straight to the point, and you say it how it is, and you're very blunt and very honest about it. Nate will go on CNN and kiss whoever's ass he has to kiss in order to get on there, but he's got no track record. In this piece on the New York Times, he mentions Ann Selzer, the lady who came out with which he calls the gold standard of polling, but he also, his 538, well, this is not his 538 anymore. They also said the New York Times Siena polling, which was the best one to trust, but he hails her, as a gold standard. And he mentions about her poll coming out 3 points up for Kamala in Iowa. Kamala obviously lost Iowa by 13 points at the end of the day. But how do these people, now obviously she's retired since, Mark, you can sleep at night knowing that Ann Selzer is now retired.
Yeah. Well, she was really giving us a run for our money.
But Nate, listen to this, because this goes back to what you just said about these people all adjusting their polls just one day before the election, after more than half the country has voted early this time around. The final Times Siena national poll, including third-party candidates, had Mr. Trump 1 point ahead. There was plenty of data to support the Trump win. Do you have in front of you, Mark, that New York Times Siena national polling that they did throughout the course? Because I remember it being extremely to the left.
Well, they did a wild thing, which is like right at the end of August, they did put out, I think they were really the only other major pollster that is they are accurate. They do some accurate things, and I'll get into how they were lying, but they were one of the really big ones other than us that had Trump winning the national popular vote at all back then, because everybody was trying to make it look like she was in some 2-month long post convention bounce. And that's, not what was happening here. Let me filter by them. But the main issue that they had is that they would put out state polls that were not favorable to Trump. But if you look in the crosstabs, you could see it was just, they were oversampling Biden supporters. And if you corrected for that, okay. So they polled 5 times, and they had Trump winning by 1 in July and early September. Then they had it tied. Then they had Harris +3. So all of September and October, not their final poll, but the poll that was up there was Harris +3. And then at the end, they say, tie. That's what you were seeing across the board. Tie.
Right.
Siena was no different. They were putting out a state favorable to Trump, a state favorable to Harris at the same time. And yet, what you saw in the news was, it's too close to call. It's too close to call. But every single one of them put out a map that showed Harris just barely eking out the electoral college. So it's like at the end of the day, you could tell what every single one of them was doing. Really, the only people that put out electoral, listen, everybody on Twitter put out a Trump 312 map. It wasn't hard to see. And I thought that's what the race was going to be, even though my polling said 297. I was like, it's probably going to be 312.
You said that exact thing on the show, by the way. I think a day or two before the election, you said 297, and you told me on the high end 312. You said those same exact numbers. Everyone who wants to go see, I don't have the time to go look, but you can go back and watch the episode, and you can see the episode we did right before the election with Mark. He said those two exact numbers, 297 and 312 on the high side.
The consensus on Twitter and the consensus in the betting market, the consensus, like everybody with a brain, was 312, but they might steal it. That was the consensus. The consensus in the media was, Harris is probably going to win with 287.
Right.
It's too close to call.
Right.
That's it. That's what they would say. And it's because they can't bring themselves to challenge the status quo. Have a candidate like Trump come in and maybe, upset the gravy train or piss off their advertisers that's the problem.
We often heard too big to rig, Mark, throughout the campaigns, and the Trump people would say, don't say that. It's not true. It can always be rigged. But I truly think that this election was too big to rig. And, I don't watch Fox News very often, but I'll see a clip every now and then on Twitter. And I heard Jessica Tarlov, I got to be honest, I think I've met her in person many times. I think she's got a double-digit IQ. And she's sitting at the table with a straight face saying, well, Trump may have won the popular vote, but he didn't win over 50% of the popular vote. So he wasn't overwhelmingly elected by his peers in the United States. I mean, Mark, are these people just deranged?
Well, there's a Time magazine cover I saw today with Bill Clinton's mandate, and he got 43% of the vote. You know what I mean? It's like, they will say whatever they need to say to keep the gravy train going, to keep their paymasters happy, to maintain their beautifully lucrative talking head job on the idiot box. And the problem is that now all their channels are dying. Like Fox is doing pretty good. Newsmax is doing pretty good, but man, I think MSNBC is on the chopping block now. CNN's probably going to have massive layoffs. Yeah. And the funny thing to me is they did it for Harris and Biden. What a crazy thing to destroy a 20 or 30 year record of cable news TV being the most trusted source of like thousands of hours people watched and poured into these outlets. And they destroyed it all for Biden. What on earth?
Well, CNN was going downhill long before. The day I think CNN died was the day they fired Lou Dobbs off of there. They fired Lou Dobbs off of there because he was talking out against an open border, which now we see. I often say it on the show. Anyone who's listened to Lou and everyone who's listens to this show, like 90%, Mark, follow Lou's career, his 50-plus long-year career as a journalist. Everything he had said in the early 2000s had come to true. He had mentioned China was going to eat our lunch. China did eat our lunch, and now they're eating our dinner. He had mentioned a wide open border is going to ruin this country. We now see what a wide open border has done to this country. He warned in 2004, Mark, about election systems being online and what they can do to harm an election. This is long before, Mark, 2016 and 2020, when we find that there are some issues with election machines. The man was 20 years ahead on that, 16 to 20 years ahead on that. So everything the man said wound up coming to true. I don't know how he was able to do it, down to the person, Mark. I talked to him about personnel, and he'd tell me that guy's a lowlife. He's going to be a scumbag. Don't trust him. And I'd say, you're crazy. What the hell do you know? 6 months later, it came out. Lindsey Graham was one of them. Lou had Lindsey Graham to the T.
I believe it.
I want to take a quick break here. When we come back, I want to talk about, you had mentioned these establishment folks in legacy media. Karl Rove says Trump is going to pay the price for his cabinet picks and the chaos it's causing. President Trump also exactly. President Trump also has a pretty decent approval rating heading into January. We're going to talk about, and the Democrats have spoken about who their preferred choice is for president in 2028. You guys may be surprised on who they're rallying behind. We're coming back with Mark Mitchell, folks. Stay with us.
I'm excited to announce our Christmas extravaganza is finally here. Get this season's flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. Our famous My Slippers, they haven't been on sale for over a year. Regularly $119.98, now only $59.98. Our 6-piece towel sets are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only $29.98. With hundreds of MyPillow products, there's something for everyone on your Christmas list. Bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save on all MyPillow products. For example, flannel sheets for as low as $59.98, or our 6-piece towel sets, just $29.98. But that's not all. I'm extending our 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st of 2025. Plus, all orders over $75 or more ship absolutely free.
We're back. We're talking to the leading pollster for Rasmussen, Mark Mitchell. For all you who just saw that Mike Lindell commercial, if you want to place your order via phone, you can call 800-969-3077, 800-969-3077 if you're more comfortable placing your order via phone and you want to get some Christmas gifts. I'm going to go ahead and send Mark over some dog beds and pillows for Christmas, so that'll be my gift to him. Mark, I want to turn to first President Trump. According to now, I'm going to believe this poll just for the sake of the numbers. They sound good. Harvard Caps Harris poll found that 50% of respondents said they approve of Trump's performance compared to 40% who say they disapprove. Pretty good numbers for President Trump now going into a second term. It seems it can't get any worse than what Biden is doing right now. And this polling was done in the midst of President Trump picking his cabinet now. There's some controversial picks that the Marxist left are having a hard time swallowing. Matt Gaetz was withdrawing his nomination this week, saying he doesn't want to be a distraction to President Trump and the transition team. But you've got Pete Hegseth, who they're coming out against, and I'm sure if Pete Hegseth steps down, they'll find a reason to go after Howard Lutnick from Cantor Fitzgerald, who paid for all the kids' tuition, who died, family members died in 9/11. These people bear no boundaries, Mark. Let's first go with President Trump, 54%. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, first off, no matter what Trump does, every single one of these people is going to be attacked. That's literally all the CNN website is right now. It's like you get a sex scandal and you get a sex. Like that's literally all they have left. Listen, this is wild, but maybe Reuters Ipsos is incorrect about Trump favorability. Maybe it's not 37%. And since he fills stadiums across the world and he got the most votes of anyone ostensibly in history, as I think maybe investigations will find, his favorability is higher than whatever Democrat is running. And he entered office with a higher approval rating than Biden did, believe it or not. And so, yeah, he was 50% going into the election. He won. He's going to get a bounce. We're actually polling approval right now, but I did a one-night preview. I think we're going to have a 54% handle too. And, of course, he's still going to have his 39% very unfavorable. But if you're talking about the cabinet picks, we actually do have a report card back for that. And listen, this is absolutely stunning and incredible because the mainstream media, in my opinion, doesn't drive the narrative anymore. Twitter does. Right. Twitter doesn't really seem to be having a problem with these cabinet picks. It's almost like fascination and relief that we're getting the people that like they want, right?
Right.
And that, I think Gaetz maybe threw a wrench in it, but everybody seemed to shrug it off in a few hours. But in general, how would you rate the job that Trump's doing, picking people for his administration? And this was polling this week, so they knew about Gaetz. They knew about all these other ones. 35% excellent, 15% good, that's 50%. That's higher than anything Biden ever got rated on ever. So there's that.
I would love to see Biden's cabinet picks, by the way, the transgender HHS secretary and Pete Buttigieg. Seriously. And the rest of the freaks, the bald head guy from the Pentagon who was stealing people's luggages.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. Who was it that, was holding that image up? Like really smart. Like that's strong symbolism. But, you only got 36% saying poor when the mainstream media narrative is these people are the worst ever. And we all know it's because they're a shock to the system. But Republicans, here's a crazy one. The Republicans rating 61% excellent, 22% good, 83% excellent or good. So here's the thing. It's like Mitch McConnell literally has ratings in the Republican Party as low as Nancy Pelosi.
Yep.
John Thune just got elected. We have one night of preview on that. His numbers are better, but not much. And so my advice to establishment Republicans is that your voters think they have a mandate and they think that Trump is doing an amazing job picking people. And not only that, 89% of Republicans think that it's at least somewhat likely or very likely that the Senate will confirm his choices. So they expect Republicans to play ball and do the job and get these people through. And yet, I'm sure their phones are melting right now from all the big food, the big war, the big intel, like all of these massive corporate interests that have their hands in the senators. That's where we're at.
The issue we have, and it was the reason that winning those 2 extra seats, Eric Hovde folded like a cheap lawn chair saying, I lost the election. I'm going to go on my very way. And I put out a tweet. This is the very embodiment of the Rhino Republican Party, not going down without a fight, accepting it for what it is. Now, I'm not saying go ahead and start an insurrection over it, but wait till every vote is counted. Wait till you see if there's any irregularities and stuff like that. The same way Bob Casey's doing in Pennsylvania, which, by the way, you're not hearing an issue out of that. But the issue I see we have, Mark, is you've got Mitch McConnell in the Senate. You've got Lisa Murkowski in the Senate. You've got Susan Collins in the Senate. Those are three. Now you have a few rhinos who like to come in and out. You've got Mitch McConnell. You've got John Curtis out of Utah. Now it's like never ending. These people. How is President Trump going to be able to govern now when he's going to be held back by 5 idiots who just want to do what the hell they want to do?
Yeah, this is a big one. Listen, I don't know what's going on. Well, I do know one thing that's going on behind the scenes, right? And I'll get to that. But listen, Trump built a really great transition team that nobody was talking about, knew about. Trump made an election that was too big to rig.
Yep.
Trump, like you said, like massively overperformed in Michigan and Pennsylvania in a way where I do think they had the power to stop the counting. Do think they had the power to, listen, like in Wisconsin, you just bust people in from Chicago, register them right there. You just get, all you need to do is move enough people. And we all saw the trucks. So he did a good job. I have to assume that there are leverage points that we don't know about. And what I keep referring back to is Elon Musk is spending every waking hour with Donald Trump. Elon Musk is tweeting about the hammer of justice coming. Trump is not going to put another Jeff Sessions in there. And I think these people will be held accountable. So there was stuff going on in Bucks County, and I forget what the tweet was, but Chris Lasavita said they will all go to jail.
Yeah.
Carrie Lake, I don't think, has conceded yet. And there are a lot of ridiculous stuff going on in Arizona. So what I have heard through people who I know, people who blah, 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 connections, they are talking to people about doing an election integrity, something of some sort. And so Donald Trump came out and tweeted, do not cheat in this election. You will go to jail. And so that's the kind of accountability I think people are expecting. We polled on that. They want these people who are complicit in fraud to go to jail. And then it's like, listen, if you get a good Department of, Attorney General in there, there probably should be some accountability in DC. And if they're going to obstruct the mandate of the people, maybe the solution is indict 10 Democrats and 5 Republicans. That gets you, right?
You just mentioned Bucks County, and we're going to break something on the show. Now, it'll be a little bit delayed by the time this episode comes out. But Bob Casey has just conceded the Pennsylvania Senate race because of that recount in Bucks County where Dave McCormick reportedly gained votes from the recount. So now, I kind of like this, Mark. The Republicans, maybe they had a minivan out back with some mail-in ballots in the back, and they started bringing them in themselves.
That's not what happened. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court shot down counting illegal ballots. That's what happened.
Illegal ballots and ballots that came in like after Election Day, and no. And
then you got Fetterman, and it's like, what are a few illegal ballots? Who cares? You know what I mean? It's not the sacred right of the U.S. citizen to vote. Who cares? They will go to jail. That's what Chris. That's what the co-chair of Donald Trump's campaign said. These people will go to jail.
You'd mentioned Fetterman, and I got to admit, I'm starting to like Fetterman as a person, not as a politician. I think he's very far out there. He put out a tweet the other day. It was in response to Mike Johnson instituting the transgender bathroom ban from that dude from Delaware is coming into the House. And John Fetterman said, there's not a job I'm afraid to lose if it requires me to degrade anyone. If that's a defining issue for a voter, there will be a different candidate. We have a bathroom in my office that anyone's able to use. And this was to that transgender congresswoman, man. And I replied to the tweet, just make sure he doesn't leave the seat up. It's not proper etiquette for the female staffers.
I love
it. Mark, without comedy in this business, you die. You're sort of new to this business. I may be younger than you, but I've been in it for a long time, and I have some gray hairs in the back of my head from it because it is such an insane business. When you look at it and you break it down at the end of the day, the amount of hatred, Mark, that goes into this thing. Look at what they've done to President Trump. They wanted this man's head removed. I've never in my life exhibited that much hatred for anybody. and I've had bad things happen in my life like everyone else has. I can't think of a time where I ever wished death upon a person like that. And for what, Mark? For what? What has Donald Trump done that has been so detrimental and so bad to people? I can't think of a damn thing he's done that has really pissed somebody off. I mean, he's just a regular guy at the end of the day.
Yeah, the level is so hate is so high, and it really has corrupted. Bill O'Reilly had a really good segment today where he's talking about what he thinks is going to happen to MSNBC.
I saw that, yeah.
And they need to distance themselves from NBC or the other way around. And what he says ultimately comes down to the problem with MSNBC isn't liberal bias. It's just sheer seething hate. Right. And I'll add on top of that, it's insane sheer seething hate because they'll just drop it at on a dime if they think that it's in their best interest to reverse course, as everybody is coming to see with what happened with Morning Joe and Mika Brzezinski. I think ultimately what it comes down to me is the de-religionization of the United States, and that, listen, it was founded as a nation on separation of church and state, freedom of religion. A lot of this stuff wasn't written into our legal documents, but it was the context in which the nation was founded. The really good, interesting Timcast show last night on basically this concept and how basically softly the founders were outsourcing morality to Christianity. And now without it, a lot of less people practice. The problem is that you lose that whole concept of loving your enemies. And
right.
So, people are always going to be enemies when their interests aren't aligned. I think there's a lot of people who are really radicalized right now, probably because they're complicit in some illegal things,
of course,
or the gravy train might stop. I think that's what we're seeing right now. And what's so dark to me is that they'll willingly brainwash and drive insane a large chunk of the population in order. So the whole idea of integrity, values is totally gone. I don't think our country can survive in its current state, because I would pose this question, right? If we have no religious values, why should any elected official go to DC and look out for anybody's interest except their own?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
What's the answer? Well, I mean, I can't think of one. Oh, they're afraid they're going to get voted out. Well, I don't think anybody's afraid of getting voted out down there.
No, because you leave and you get a better job somewhere else.
Yeah, right. That's right. You get on the board of Raytheon or something.
No, you get on the board of Fox News.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah. They're certainly not afraid of going to jail.
No, man.
I don't think a single one of them has, right?
Though that's the thing. Everyone wants to talk about this Matt Gaetz thing and the integrity of what Matt Gaetz did as a private citizen or before he got into office or whatever. Okay, it is what it is. I don't know if he did it or he didn't. The allegations sort of seem like they're coming out at a weird time, right? Especially if it happened years ago, like 5 years ago. Now you wait for it. Okay, sort of seems weird. I don't know what Matt Gaetz did in his private life. I hope he didn't do the things that they say he did, and he says he didn't. So he denies that happened, but now they come out. But if you go look, Mark, you want to talk about prostitution, why don't we go look at every single member of Congress who's in D.C. who cheats on their wife? Why don't we go look at every single member of Congress? Madison Cawthorn came out and said that these guys are having these orgies with drugs and the man loses his seat. Go figure that. The guy loses his seat the next month with President Trump's backing him, loses his seat after coming out saying that they're having these like I said, drug-infused parties at prostitutes. So, okay, that's fine. If you want to go after Matt Gaetz for it, that's fine. Let's go after everybody else. How about we talk about Fang Swalwell, Eric Swalwell, who was sleeping with a Chinese spy? Why don't we talk about that and what he told her while he was sleeping with her? Mark, why don't we talk about that? Why don't we go down the list? I don't care, Mark, if we go down the list and we get rid of every single damn one of them there because they're all good for nothing at the end of the day anyway.
What I think about this is that where is the soul of the conservative movement right now? In 2016, what I would have said is, well, maybe it's a bunch of people on a subreddit on Reddit. I don't know. Maybe there wasn't one. I don't really know. In 2020, it was probably on Truth Social or Parler or Getter and watching Steve Bannon, right? The soul of the conservative movement right now is mainstream on Twitter.
Right.
And what I can say is that in my impression, the discussions I see about this is that people are much more likely to believe Matt Gaetz and the fact that he focused on the way that these people enrich themselves than they are about believing any accusations, because this is on a long list of dozens of people who have been accused by stuff. Now, I'm not saying your average normie who reads Axios is going to believe that.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is, like, if you're a Republican in Senate, what has changed in the last 6 months, and very clearly 3 weeks ago, is that you're not going to be able to just go on Hannity and get your narrative out there. It will be rejected.
Yep.
And so I don't know how that's going to play out at all. But like what I do think is that Twitter right now is massively invested in everybody Trump picks getting through.
Yeah.
And so they're going to F around and probably find out.
For everyone who wants to know what Mark's talking about, there's a nice chart at the F around to find out ratio. You can find it somewhere on YouTube. It's absolutely brilliant. And that's absolutely right. But Mark, it's the same reason that my show, the show you do, the podcast you do for Rasmussen, is getting higher audiences than MSNBC and CNN in some ratings demographics. It's sad, Mark. We run around here a very low budget, very easy, small staff of people that I like to work with. Very, very small staff. And we get this thing out there, and we get this thing out every single day, 5 days a week, 7 days a week. On the weekends, we run some reruns, midday updates out every single day, and we do it very, very low budget. And you've got these multi-million-dollar organizations that literally cannot pull an audience. You had mentioned the core of the conservative right now. I'll tell you what the issue is. Karl Rove is one of them. He's got a Wall Street Journal piece out this week. Trump sends clowns to the cabinet confirmation circus. He has mishandled his nominations, not only by picking Gaetz, Hegseth, and Gabbard. Now, who the hell is Karl Rove? The problem is you've got Fox News, and the voters and the people, the audience, Mark, they absolutely reject it. And I'll tell you why. Because when I have a guest on this show, Mark, that people don't like, I see the deviation in the number. I look at the ratings every single day, and I look at them very well, and I look at minute by minute, and if I see if there's a deviation, I said something wrong, I go back and I look and see what I said that pissed people off. Sometimes it's my cursing. I'm sorry, I can't control that. Sometimes it's me stepping on the guest. I'm sorry, I try to control that. But Fox News has got to see that the Trey Gowdys that they're having on, the Karl Roves that they're having on, is not what the audience wants to hear. It's a rejection. Yeah. And these folks, Mark, have been rejected time and time again. How many more times does Karl Rove, Britt Hume, the rest of them, Trey Gowdy, have to be rejected before Fox says, okay, enough is enough. We're done with this. This is not the Republican Party anymore.
I don't know how Fox changes, or if it will, or if it needs to, or if it can. But when I look at Karl Rove, I just pulled up his last 20 years of Google searches, and the man has never been less relevant. And so right now, when he goes on the air, I can only assume that he's just saying whatever he needs to say to maintain relevance. And what he's creating is a false narrative based on my polling numbers. I just asked America, and America, especially Republicans, does not believe that Donald Trump is mishandling his appointments at all. So in my opinion, maybe he isn't aware of this in a public opinion. It's a false narrative,
of course,
because Trump's going to pick people. Some people are going to get through, some people aren't. So he is shopping around stuff to make himself relevant. I think that's what they all do. And I don't know if it's something that has to change within the producers. I think Fox News is probably telling you, oh, our ratings have never been better. Maybe that's true. Wow. At some point, though, independent media is going to eat their lunch. And you talked about ratings. Like, listen, I am just one source in YouTube, and I have a $1,200 stack here. I do my own thumbnails. I edit it. It's free. I got like 9 million views in August, September, and October. Like 9 million views, and that's not counting anything of mine that got clipped. I think like I had an Alex Jones piece that the entire world saw, where I called for an election integrity commission. So Rove's not saying that stuff. Fox News isn't saying that stuff. And we're in an era of pull, not push media. And they're pulling for what Trump is doing. They're pulling for accountability. And yeah, I mean, like maybe they'll hash out a great existence, but I don't know what's going to happen when RFK gets in there and cuts out all their pharmaceutical advertisement. And, they might have to change. Or maybe it will free them up to talk about stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have a tough time. I want to take one more quick break here, folks. We're talking with Mark Mitchell, great American, great pollster. Mark, I had said before last break we were going to get to it. We ran out of time in this segment, but we'll talk about the next. The Democrats overwhelmingly are picking their next candidate for 2028. We're going to come back and tell you exactly who that is. On the other side, I also want to take up the 2030 census that's coming and what it means for those deep blue states who kicked their voters out of there during COVID lockdowns. The ones who went to Florida, the ones who went to Texas. And the other thing I want to take up, Mark, is something we missed in the first segment, and that's just how far right this country has moved this election. You go on the New York Times election results website's the best, I think, in the business that you can go to. You go to their damn website, Mark, it's red arrows everywhere, for just how far right certain blue states and red states have moved. So I want to take that up on
a few key places.
A few key places, and we're going to talk about those blue-haired freaks when we return. Yeah. I'm sure you're not going to be surprised where they're domiciling, but we'll come right back with Mark Mitchell. Stay with us, folks.
Because of your overwhelming support, our $14.88 MyPillow has been one of the biggest sales in MyPillow history. I couldn't think of a better way to say thank you than to extend our wholesale pricing through Christmas. Get a classic standard MyPillow for only $14.88. Upgrade to a queen size, just $18.88. King size, only $1 more. Get my body pillows for only $29.88. And ready? Multi-use MyPillows, only $9.88. It's perfect time to stock up for Christmas gifts for everyone on your list. Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our wholesale pricing, including my classic standard MyPillows, only $14.88. But that's not all. I'm so confident you're going to love our classic MyPillows that I'm going to extend my 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2025. Plus, orders over $75 ship absolutely free.
We're back with Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen, one of the greatest pollsters in the world, in the nation, at least. Mark, this wasn't a poll by you, because I don't think you would have put it out if you polled something like this. So ridiculous. But the Democrats have a preferred choice for 2028 on who they want to run for the White House. The poll found that 41% of likely Democrat voters would vote for Kamala Harris as the top of the ticket. California Governor Gavin Newsom placed second, a very distant second, 8. Pennsylvania's midget governor Josh Shapiro at 7. How is this even possible that not even 2 weeks after her getting absolutely mollywopped, getting cracked over the head in this election, Trump's now 2-0 against the Democrat women that they put up against him, by the way. That's not a slight at women, but just the Democrats' choice of women that they put up. But they 40% want Kamala Harris to run in 2028. Do these people like losing?
Well, I guess. I don't know, but I actually can confirm with our own results that validate these findings, believe it or not.
Oh, my God.
And yet what I will say is I'm not surprised because I've talked about it a lot. Basically, they have a crisis of leadership. They're really in a situation where it's so patriarchal in their party. It's all about power. It's almost like a criminal organization at which sits upon the top a mob boss. And why would that person ever plan for their succession? It's all just infighting, and then somebody's going to get the nod and whatever. And I think that this is actually hilarious and should probably be spread all over the socials, because what, in my opinion, it also does is like really give anybody who's going to back Gavin Newsom a second thought. And I also do think it confirms all the people are trying to throw Kamala Harris under the bus. Again, I don't think she was the best candidate, but she did come really close. And again, Trump won a lot. Trump got a mandate, but she did kind of about like pretty good considering the.
All right, you're a numbers guy, Mark. Where did she come close, please?
Well, again, let's talk about Milwaukee and Detroit. But I'm just saying, like, Trump should have won bigger, especially considering the absolute state of the fundamentals of the polling, how bad everybody's hurting, all the safety, the border invasion, blah, 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 blah. And yet for her to still get 40% of Democrats, it's kind of a signal they don't blame her that much. But we said, which current leader is better for the Democrat Party? Now, this was less about the candidates, but just like, hey, who's going to take the ball and run with leadership? And it's Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, or Hakeem Jeffries. And among Democrats, they gave Kamala Harris a majority, 54%. So it's like Joe Biden's dead practically, almost, right? And then you have Schumer, 5%, Hakeem Jeffries, 11%.
Yeah.
Those people are non-entities. And Kamala Harris, I mean, she's not going to be out doing press conferences and publicity stunts. She's on the beach drinking vodka. So there is no leader right now, which is why I think everything's in total disarray. I don't even know if MSNBC is getting their morning talking points. Like, who's going to send them?
Yeah, that's true. Those idiots might have to read for themselves, but the problem is they're going to read and they're going to be very upset because eventually everyone's going to have to start printing the truth. I mean, I'd argue and quip with you a little bit about Trump winning. He got 2.5 million more votes than he got in 2020. And the reason it wasn't more was because of people like Whoopi Goldberg and those folks on The View, Joy Behar. Those are the 40% of Democrats who voted for Kamala Harris. They weren't voting for Kamala Harris. They were voting against Trump. There's a group of people, Mark, that just can't seem to get their head around Trump was the president. He's now the president again. I think that's where you get your numbers. But we were talking about it in the break, and now I do want to go into it because you pissed me off.
Sorry, dude.
Trump outperformed Mark in almost
100%.
Every
Trump
single demographic. So let's go through
this.
Should
have been a Reagan era landslide. I agree with you 100%. All of the fundamentals said that. Okay. The reason it wasn't is there's a problem on the right, and that is the establishment fights him in every way. There is no accountability. They have not cracked down on election integrity issues like they should have. There was no unity. They weren't supporting him down ballot across the board like they should have been. That was one major reason. He did not get a lot of money. Yep. So that's like problem one. Problem, on their side, like here's the thing. There are a massive group of people that will vote for the person that they were told to vote for, the empty vessel. And she was that perfect empty vessel almost, right?
Yep.
The problem they have is that Joe Biden's administration got rid of 5 or 10 million of those people,
right,
and turned them into independents, turned them into flip voters. So she did her role for the Democrats, but it's like on the tail end of it, there was no scenario in which she could have acknowledged the problems at the border, where she could talk about Bidenomics being a failure. It would have been a civil war within the Democrat Party.
Right.
So again, she stunk as a candidate, but like, what do you expect her to do? She just tried to be the Democrat ham sandwich that she needed to be, and there just weren't enough Democrat voters.
In my opinion, I don't think Trump could have done anything different and would have gotten more votes. I think that, that's what it was. Now, I do want to go into some of these numbers because
I'm not blaming Trump. You're 100% right.
Yeah. No, but you did hit the nail on the head. Mitch McConnell, oh man, I'm going to refrain because people don't like when I curse, but he was dumping millions of dollars into Larry Hogan's race. Now, if he would have went up to Wisconsin and dumped it in Hovey's race, or the fella Sam, the name slipped in my head, in Nevada, he could have dumped it into the Wisconsin race. He could have dumped it into the Minnesota race. He could have dumped it into the Michigan race. All tight races. Yet this numbskull, Mitch McConnell, goes out to Maryland and starts dumping millions of dollars into Larry Hogan, who, like Kamala Harris, got mollywopped. I mean, there's no other way to put it. The guy got absolutely annihilated. But I want to look at these numbers here that we got. Not necessarily numbers, but more so trends. If you go on the New York Times Interactive 2024 map, they have a shift from 2020. Folks, I encourage you all to go look at this because it's absolutely amazing. Mark and I were going through it in the commercial break. You look at California, you can't find one blue arrow shift to the left. Unbelievable. You go to New York, you got 2 or 3 out of the 34 or something congressional districts. You go to New Jersey, you can't find a blue arrow because it's just massive red arrow after red arrow after red arrow. But, Mark, we did find a few areas where there was some decently moderate blue. Where were those areas, Mark?
The entire country moved massively right across the board. Every Democrat state, look at the border in Texas. Dear Lord, there are all the Hispanics that went massively. But what's kind of weird is that the places where they needed them to not move right, they didn't move right. And you can look at Northwest Georgia and Atlanta moved left. That's kind of weird. When
you have that up, Mark, that we could put on the screen for the audience?
Yeah.
You want to pull that up just so they can follow along with us? For everyone who's watching on video, If you guys are watching, listening on audio, I apologize, but you guys got to start joining us on Rumble and YouTube. Here we go. We got this map up here.
Look at Florida. Look at Texas. Very little in Texas moved left. It's like, okay, whatever. Kaufman County has moved a little bit left.
Yep.
But look at this area of Georgia here. That's, the population center around Atlanta, the suburbs. Yep. Look at Western North Carolina. Look at Western Pennsylvania. Even Philadelphia moved right, but it's like Pittsburgh. These areas did not. Lower Michigan, the areas of Wisconsin around Milwaukee and Madison. And it's like those are the areas everybody was watching on election night because they decided the race. Right. This is where it all hinged. And you could say, oh, well, Democrats had $1 billion. Oh, well, Democrats had a really good ground game. Actually, I don't think they did have a very good ground game. But ultimately, what needs to be answered for is like, why are they still counting? Why were they counting illegal ballots? Why were trucks showing up at 2 a.m.? Why are there pictures of tabulation centers in Wisconsin where they were dragging their feet all day so that they could dump ballots at 2 a.m.? I think that these are questions that are finally going to be answered because accountability is coming. And the only message I can give to these people who this should have been a massive landslide. The only question I have for these people is like, listen, if you're involved in this, it's probably best if you flip first.
Right. Now, Mark, if you want to justify saying exactly what you said, if you click on the margin by county there, it'll show the audience where the massive votes came from. So if you go up to scroll up there in Wisconsin or south of Wisconsin, you go to Cook County. Or if you go over to Michigan, you go look at Wayne County.
Let me zoom in. Yeah.
But there you go. That's the massive majorities of where. Now, I think there's no doubt in my mind they tried to cheat in this election. They probably successfully did so. But I think the margin of cheating just couldn't sustain the too big to rig. The early voting numbers, Mark, that we saw come in were just unbelievable.
Yeah. There were not enough Democrats in Wisconsin. There were not enough Democrats in Detroit. That's ultimately what it came down to. They needed to sweep all three.
Yep.
If they had picked up North Carolina, which did come close, they were definitely waiting on election night to call Georgia and North Carolina.
Yep.
And they just couldn't get it done. Too big to rig.
It's like I said, Mark, it's unbelievable the things that they're able to do. The other thing we were talking about there in the commercial break was the census. And what's going to happen in 2030. Now, we discussed before the show the one that came out in 2020, which was probably a little skewed and crooked and in favor of the Democrats. But this is from the American Redistricting Project, and they put out their 2030 forecast on who's going to gain and who's going to lose. And this is bad news for the Democrats, Mark. New York, under their current estimates, and now these are all numbers post people leaving those deep blue states for COVID. New York looks like it's going to lose 3 seats. Pennsylvania, 1. It looks like Minnesota will lose a seat. California will lose 4 seats. Big states, big blue, red states. Texas looks like they're going to pick up 4. Florida will pick up 3. Georgia, 1. North Carolina, 1. Tennessee, 1. So when you look at this, I mean, the level of optimism. Now, folks, when these numbers I say they're going to pick up, they're also going to lose congressional seats. So that'll be congressional seats at these deep red states. Now, if you listen to the Democrats, they'll tell you they're going to win Texas. I think there's some pollsters, Mark, who put Texas inside the margin of error for the Democrats in this election. Am I incorrect on that?
I think so. There was definitely the narrative that Texas and Florida were in play. And that's how crazy these people are, huffing their own farts. Because listen, I looked at Ann Seltzer. I watched her on two-way, and whatever. I don't think she took a check. I think they had a poll earlier in the fall that showed that Harris was only down a few points. I really do think that they convinced themselves that the fake Harris bounce was playing out even bigger in their own state. And of course, it absolutely wasn't. But that's how much objectivity has been thrown away by everybody in this industry. But like you talk about the 2030 census, and what to me that says, I'm trying to find Texas and real clear politics while I talk. To me, what that tells me is that the Democrats are going to be even more desperate because that sounds like an existential problem for them. Here's the problem I see is that since 2020, the entire country moved over 6 points to the right. But in that time, Republicans only picked up 1% more representation in Congress. That is messed up. And it's not all about redistricting. It's not all about the census. It is about ballot harvesting. It is about asymmetry in the amount of money that's spent.
Yep.
But it's also, in some ways, about how hard it is to challenge incumbents, how not ubiquitously the Republican Party is addressing the MAGA platform, which has been proven to be the big tent. That's a real problem. And then, like the census itself, I don't know, like there has to be another election between now and then. Now, what I would advise, and what's a really good article people should look up. Normally, I don't recommend an article I haven't read yet. I haven't had a chance, but I trust him. Seth Keshel put out on his Substack an article about a few days ago. The U.S. Census Bureau stole at least 16 electoral votes and 15 U.S. House seats, talking about the 2020 election or the 2020 census, how it was not above board and how it overstated Democrat representation. I think they should attempt to fix this in some way if there can be. I know there was a lot of talk with Trump's Census Bureau pick. Unfortunately, the guy got pushed out, about going in and counting how many of these people actually are illegal aliens. And I think the answer is probably enough that if you fix that problem, then you don't have to wait for 2030, but I guess we'll have to see. They should call a recount of the census. Don't know if it's possible. I know people are talking about it.
Oh, God, don't even mention something like that. The FBI will show up at your house, say you're trying to overthrow the Census Bureau.
Oh, did I tell you I've been swatted 3 times already?
No, they found where you lived?
We got hacked and I got swatted 3 times. No, I'm not. There's a certain way they do it, and I'm not going to tell you how they do. But I guess my point is that shows you that we're probably already hated and on lists, and they've pretty much weaponized everything they can against us. Nate Silver, 538, all of the mainstream media. They're even bringing the AAPOR after us, I think.
For anyone who doesn't know what swatting is, it's when these Marxist lefts or deranged people will call in a fake police threat. They'll call up and say Mark's beating his wife. And I'm not saying that's what they did, but that's what they'll do. And the cops will show up outside the door ready to ram the thing in and take poor old Mark Mitchell out of there by his neck. Unbelievable, man. These people are absolutely sick in the head. It really
Speaking of sick in the head, Morning Consult had texted, this is Senate. Cruz plus 3. Where the battleground?
I think he won by like 10, 11.
Yeah. Morning Consult, Trump plus 7 in Texas. Okay. It was plus 14.
So they only missed by like a little bit, by like a factor of 2. I mean, Mark, we're running out of time here, and I could talk to you for another hour and a half. It's always a fascinating conversation. But now that we broadcast the show on Patriot TV, they only give us an hour, so it's no fun. But we'll have you back here soon when I get back from vacation, and we'll continue this conversation. But until then, stop doing all those illegal things, and the cops won't show up at your house.
Yeah, right. Tell me about it.
Mark, thanks so much for joining us again today, brother. I'll see you soon.
Yeah, great being back. Thanks, John.
Thanks, everybody, for being with us here today on The Great America Show. Please be sure to join us back here tomorrow for The Great America Show as our quest for truth, justice, and the American way continues. We'll see you back here tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, may God bless you, may God bless America, and may God bless the great Lou Dobbs.